Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Now, today we're talking about men's sexual reproductive health. This educational outreach program is brought to you in collaboration with Grantra, the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association, the Ministry of Health, Grenada, with funding from the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. Now, through this collaborative initiative, the goal is to address the lack of access to comprehensive, integrated, client-centered, including youth-friendly sexual reproductive health and rights, HIV, and gender-based violence in Grenada. To have this discussion, I have with me Dr. Francis Martin. Dr. Martin, welcome to the program, and thank you for taking time from your busy schedule. Is there anything that you want to share with our audience before we get started, Dr. Martin?
Right. Afternoon, and thanks for having me on your program. My name is Francis Martin. I am a medical doctor by training, profession, and also have a specialty in health policy and management at the master's level. I have had 20 years of clinical experience working as a physician, emergency physician for 10 years, and then a health administrator at the Ministry of Health for an additional 10 years. I have held all of the senior management positions in the Ministry of Health, including permanent secretary, after which I resigned in 2021. I am now in public health and private practice solely, and I'm here. I'm really happy to be here to provide some care.
Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule, Doc. Now, reproductive health is an important component of a man's overall health and well-being. And oftentimes in conversations about reproductive health, men or males have been overlooked in such discussions, particularly when it comes to reproductive issues such as contraception and infertility. And most times it's perceived as a female issue or female subject matter. I would contend here that every male and their partner and even healthcare providers can protect their reproductive health by ensuring effective contraception is being used and the effective method is being used by these parties. And it's also a good way of avoiding sexual transmitted diseases. And one can understand the fertility issues, right? So Dr. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong here, but before we start our discussion, I want you to first start off by telling us what should sexual reproductive health in men encompasses?
What sexual reproductive health in men encompasses is societal change as how society views men. Now, this is not the program to talk about the plantation aspect and what it has done to the social structure of men and family and how social structure has caused men to behave the way they are. But and that is not by any means saying that this is not important. But it is very critical for men and for boys to be aware of sexual reproductive health because of the implication that it has. Society has brought us in such a way that they make men feel, or boys as a matter of fact, they make boys feel as though it is not their responsibility for sexual and reproductive health. It is not their responsibility for when it comes to infertility issues. As a matter of fact, anecdotally, it was viewed on that any two couples having a problem with fertility, it was automatically assumed that it was a female's problem. Well, I have news for those persons who think this way. In my own clinical practice, I can clearly say to you that up to 40 to 50% of the infertility problems within couples is the male's problem. As a matter of fact, in my clinical practice, most of the couples I have with fertility issues, it is indeed the male infertility issue. And I can see this getting worse if we do not start to address it. So I believe it is central. It is important because the fertility rate in our countries has been dropping over the last 20 years. And so we have to turn this around by educating people and doing a number of different things. But the short and long of it is sexual and reproductive health, as it relates, especially as it relates to infertility, is as important to men as it has always been important to females.
Well, thank you for that. This is some interesting information that you're sharing here with us. So what are some of the sexual health issues that men should be, I suppose, aware of then? Because you're talking about infertility here, and what you're saying is, while sometimes, like you rightfully said, that the females are sometimes the one being looked at or being held accountable, what you're saying is the opposite in this context. So what are some of the things that our men should be aware of?
Well, first of all, men should be aware of our own sexual and reproductive development. Most of our fathers don't even know when their boys have changed from adolescent to young man. Most mothers know when their daughter has changed from a young girl to a young woman because she knows the onset of the period. But not even boys, and some a lot of fathers as well as mothers don't even know when that change took place in the life of the boy. So that education has to start right there. The boy has to know at what stage he is now able to make sperm. A lady, a child, a young girl is born with all the eggs she'll ever need in her entire life. It's just that it is in storage in a freezer, and every month one comes out as a period.
Absolutely.
But boys get that chance to make sperm. And for those who may be listening to this program, there are a number of secondary sex characteristics that the boys may be aware of. And many of us misunderstood this to mean that that's when the boy starts to make sperm. So, for example, the voice starts to break. The voice box gets a little bit big. His penis starts to lengthen. His chest starts to grow. His voice deepens. But those are not the thing that says that the boy is ready to become a young man. Most of us boys remember when there was a seed in our breasts. That was very painful between 9 and 13. And then the seed disappears. That's the point at which the boy starts to make sperm. So we need to let boys know that now you're a young man when that happens. No, so just as how we used to take the girl into the home and speak to her after her periods come and tell her you now need to be careful because you can get pregnant now, we did do the same thing with our boys at that stage. Bring our boys in and says, okay, your testosterone is at a certain level now where your testosterone is encouraging you to make sperm. From here on out, you can get someone pregnant, so you need to be careful about that. So we have to start kind of like there, where our parents need to tell our boys, this is the first sign that you need to be careful about your sexual reproductive health. Secondly, at that stage, that boy's body needs some very specific nutritional development for him to make sperm and make it healthy. He also needs specific nutritional development for his muscles to develop nice and strong, because boys require about 2/3 more calories than females ever going to require during the adolescent age. So that boy needs to be fed properly. The parents need to know what food to feed that boy with to get him to get very strong in terms of his fertility. And then that boy needs to learn a very cold fact. And that fact is most sexually transmitted infections that young men get in their lifetime, they contract them during their teenage years, just after adolescence, when they become boys and they understand this whole issue of sexual activity. And further, that boy needs to be told that sexually transmitted infection contracted when you're a teenager increases your chance by 5-fold of becoming infertile later on, especially if it is a sexually transmitted infection including gonorrhea and chlamydia. Because these infections, while there are treatment for them, they can cause a complication called scarring or blocking of the spermatic cord, which is the cord that carries sperm from the testes, where it's stored and made, up to the penis during ejaculation. And if that happens, that boy has a risk of not being able, making sperm, of course, but the sperm can't come out because there's blockage in the spermatic cord. So that boy needs to be careful about this. He may not have any idea what's going on, but in his 20s or 30s, when he starts having a meaningful relationship and is about to have a family, all of a sudden realize that he does not make sperm. That boy also needs to be told that what he sees when he ejaculates, that whitish or creamish substance he sees when he ejaculates, that is not sperm. That doesn't necessarily mean sperm at all. And that boy needs to know that, because a lot of men feel, I am making sperm because when I ejaculate, something comes out. Well, that boy needs to learn that what is coming out there is fluid from his seminal vesicles. It is fluid from his prostate. Of course, that fluid could have sperm in it, but that's not necessarily sperm. So that boy needs to know that what you're seeing there is not necessarily sperm. That boy also needs to learn that there is one way to tell if his sperm or if his ejaculate, what he's putting out, is a good thing. In other words, natural semen after ejaculation should get clear after about half an hour, clear as water. So that boy needs to start checking out his semen to see if it's good semen by allowing some of his semen to settle on the surface for a while and see if it gets clear after half an hour. Those are good ideas that sperm or that semen is okay. So those are the kind of discussions we have to have with our men. I mean, the conversation doesn't end here. There's a lot more to it, but those are the major ones that our boys need to be aware of as it relates to the sexual reproductive health and in particular infertility.
So I know in the greater context, you mentioned that the age of, I mean, this is news to me, right? And I'm not a boy or a man, but at the age of 9 or 10, that's when boys start experiencing transition in their bodies. So from your experience, you have a wealth of knowledge from the sociological perspective because you did public health. What is the appropriate age then that should parents start discussing, I guess, sexual health with their children? Because, I mean, the idea of the word sex itself, and we're not talking about male and female here. Sometimes it could be sex in terms of male and female, but when you say sex at home, they take it to mean something else. So sometimes you don't have that conversation happening, whether you're male or female. But, I mean, in the case of boys, this is enlightening for me, in case I do have a son at some point.
I know. But I do not prescribe to a magic age to start sexual reproductive conversation. I don't think there's a magic age. I think there is age appropriate discussion that you can have and conversation you can have with children. I mean, I agree that the social structure and the effects of the plantation, and by the way, I honestly believe that we're still in a plantocracy. You know, the plantation issues is still happening in our society at the moment, and we're still suffering from it from today. So I don't think there is a magic age. I think there is an age-appropriate response that you can give to your children. And it's not an easy question to answer because the majority of adults who are honest enough will agree with me. But those who are hiding under a partition or a veil of something will pretend as though this is not something that you're supposed to talk about. That is, you're not using, even right now in the 21st century, I have conversation with adults, and the word sex is hard to come out of the mouth of an adult. Even today, the 16th of February, 2023. Can't you imagine this? So the problem is deep-seated in our society. But the long and short of it is that my answer is there is no age to start, but there is an age-appropriate response that every child who asks a question or every opportunity a child gets to learn something should learn it so that we can have good and sexual health education.
Absolutely, I agree with you. So, I mean, from your experience and working in the field, what are some of the barriers you think that men have in assessing services about their sexual reproductive health?
The barriers are purely social barriers. I know I could be taken into account for that, but I'm going to say it because I like to encourage and tease people to think. The barriers are social barriers. And the reason I'm saying they're social barriers is because from my personal experience, having chipped away at those barriers for years and years and years, I am seeing now that men simply wanted someone to start chipping away at it for them. Because now they're coming forward. Men are coming forward and talking about their sexuality. They're talking about infertility. They're talking about erectile dysfunction. They're talking about wanting to test their testosterone and all these other things. And that's because we've been chipping away at it all the time. So the barriers were social barriers. We taught men, we nurture babies and children into barriers for their own health. We encourage them to bar their own health. We tell them they should not care about their health. And when they do care about their health, we lambaste them for being too caring about their health. Society makes it in such a way that a man has to be afraid to go to the doctor because the reception he gets from the healthcare providers is very, very repulsive. Our health system is designed for women and children. Our health infrastructure is designed for women and children. The programs that are rolled out in the healthcare system is designed for women and children. Even the way patients engage the healthcare provider, the engagement itself is for women and children. So, for example, a man goes to the health facility, to the health center or the hospital. That man has a sexually transmitted infection. You expect that man to go up to a receptionist who is going to ask him, what's your name? What's your age? Where you're from? And why are you here? This man will never tell this woman or this female why he is here. I experienced it firsthand, being in the ER, and the nurses get frustrated with these guys because she's like, Doc, these guys don't want to see the doctor. They come to see the doctor. I asked them what's going on with it. They're not answering me. They're not interested in seeing the doctor. I just told them wait outside. When nurse tells me that, I walked outside, went behind, I saw the bro. I said, bro, tell me what's up. What's going on with you? Him and I have a nice little chat. I find out what's going on with him outside. I go inside, get my injections, get my stuff, open the back door, pull him in, give him his injection, give him his tab, his prescription. He walks out a happy man. The system tramples upon men's health. And so you're talking about barriers? The society has to talk about barriers for men's health.
Oh, so you're saying it's really a cultural thing. It really stems from the plantation. It's really cultural, and you articulated very well. The system is set up for women and children, and there's also that issue of privacy. But we're not going to go into that. We're not gonna go into that. But are there some specific health issues that affect men that women does not experience?
Oh yeah. I mean, first of all, sexual arousal for men and women are different, and the hypocrisy of us would like, and ladies, sometimes I have issues with ladies. Ladies are sexually aroused by, you got to do something. You got to see something. You got to hear some nice words. They might have to, do a little thing. And you know what I'm talking about. We don't need to get there. Well, ladies, let me tell you something. Men don't need this for sexual arousal. A man can get aroused by simply looking at a woman. That's different. And we should not downplay this aspect. Sometimes females like to downplay this as though the man is some kind of an awful human being for feeling sexual by looking. No, that's how we are. So to my mind, that's one of the sexual issues that are different between men and women. Secondly, women are designed differently to us, and the experience for sexual activity and arousal is different. A man have a lot more problems asserting himself sexually, making sure that he has the right accolades to satisfy a woman in a way. In other words, during sexual activity, men, to my mind, have a lot more pressure to satisfy than a woman has pressure to satisfy. That psychological barrier is huge in us as men. The issue of maintaining an erection so that you can have an orgasm, that is not an easy thing to do. Ladies don't have to worry about this. You just sit back and relax. Of course, I know some ladies are participants in the process.
That's not true.
But I like the argument part of thing, in the sense that, in the sense that sometimes during sexual activity, a lady doesn't have to do anything. She can stay there. But a man must continue to work at it if he has to get an ejaculation to take place. It is not something that naturally happens to a man. He can't just sit there and ejaculation takes place. Well, so those are the social psychological issues that I think that are different with men and women. The similarities in terms of infections that affects both of them is similar for both parties. But for men, it has more to do with maintaining his testosterone level at a certain age and a certain level so that he can maintain his sexual prowess to be able to do the job of fertilizing his female.
Ah, wow. This is very informative. Now, as a society, and you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about as a girl, you know exactly the changes that occurs in your body as a young girl going into your teenage life. You know exactly that transition that taking place through your body because you have a period and so forth. Now, how, as a society, we tend to put a lot of, I guess, pressure on women in terms of avoiding pregnancy, and we should use contraceptives, we should do this, we should abstain, you know? How can men get involved in that process?
Men can get involved in the process if the females in their lives get them involved in the process. Because whether you like it or not, most single parents' home are females. And for that reason, a huge chunk of our men were nurtured and grown by females.
Right.
A woman cannot raise a boy into a man. A man has to do this. So there is a huge responsibility on both sides. Fathers need to understand that they have a responsibility to raise the boy, as well as the female has to understand that she needs a man in the child's life to be able to raise that child adequately. And I think I was distracted a little bit with the question that you asked. What was that again?
How can men get involved in the part of sexual health for women, such as visiting the clinic, what kind of contraceptives to take, how do we prevent pregnancy? Because I said the pressure is always on women to probably avoid pregnancy or whatever it is. How can we get you guys involved in that process? Learning the proper contraceptives.
Men has to be engaged, and for no one should ever think that a man does not want to get involved and get engaged. Engage men in a way that reaches men. There's a particular way that you can reach men to get them interested in something. And once you engage them, you get them involved. And I'm saying this because over the years, I have seen what male engagement has done. And now I'm seeing a lot of male engagement. Now, let me say this again. And again, it's going to be a bit argumentative, but I like that because it encourages us to think. Ladies, do not believe that the way you think men should be engaged is the way men should be engaged. Because most of the time, the lady is wrong in her thoughts of how men should be engaged. Over the years, I have been asked to do men's health issues and men's health programs and so on. I have seen the men's health program that was successful, and I saw the men's health program that failed miserably. And when I ask about who organized these health sessions for those that failed, it was females who organized it. In fact, one year, I asked an organizer, I said to her, what did you do to help men to come out to the session? She said, we wrote letters, we sent it out, we wrote letters, we walked through the village and put the envelope under the doors in the houses so that the men can come out. Now you tell me, which man in Grenada will come out to something because you sent him a letter? Or you put a letter in his house. The point I'm making is the things that reach women, that gets them organized and gets them interested, is not the same things that get men interested and organized. Women are interested in people. Women love people. Women are mostly interested in people. Men are most interested in things. That's a fact of life. Men are interested in things. So if you engage men on the issue of things, men are more likely to show up than you engage them by giving them a verbal encouragement to come in. So how do you get men involved in contraceptions and so on? Engage them in a way that reaches them. And by the way, men will tell you how to reach them. If you sit and ask them, they will tell you how to reach them because there are ways to reach men to get them interested in contraceptive.
Okay, so tell us some of the contraceptives available for men. I mean, we need to learn about this in the process, but maybe it could be a communicative thing. So I think you're saying communication is the key here.
Communication is the key here.
We need to communicate.
Now, the contraceptions that are available for men is very limited as it comes in terms of the options available for females. And I guess you can say it's because of the patriarchic kind of society that we live over the years, where more of the studies and the studies and all of the technological development focus mostly on contraceptives for women. So women have oral contraceptive pills that stops ovulation. Women have injections that can be used to alter their periods. Then there are the barrier methods like condoms and even things like barrier over the cervix and those sort of things, the T, the coil, these sort of things. For men, the contraception that we know most about is condoms. Really. Condoms is a huge thing for men. And then in certain circumstances, and by the way, I don't support that one for our black population at all, and that is vasectomy or tying of the tubes, if you want to put it that way. But men, because men are constantly making sperm every single day. And sperm has a lifespan. It lasts, I think, it's 100 and something days, and then it dies off, and a new set that's coming. So every day he's building new ones and storing it, and it goes through a recycling period, which is very different to the female body. The female body is like a clock. It's organized time for certain activities. So there is time for eggs to come out. There is time for eggs to come down through the tract. There is time for the eggs to come out of the period. Men don't have that. Men make sperm every single day. So it's not very easy to have a contraception for men having to make these things every day. But condoms is the most important thing. And again, there's a huge societal and even issues surrounding use of condom that we need to get our men comfortable with to help them to understand that they should be a part of it. But I think more importantly, because we are a partner, as we are put into this world as partner, it's about you and your partner coming together and sitting and talking about what's the best contraception for both, without putting pressure on each one, but just doing what is best for both. Because there are strengths in both and weaknesses in both. And you and your partner just need to know what's the best method that you can use for your planning your family.
Okay, absolutely. So how can men ensure that they have, I suppose, excellent health, not just sexual health, but excellent health overall? What can men do in that regard?
Well, men needs to understand what their role is. Traditionally, we were the hunter-gatherers. That's not necessarily the way right now. But the point is, in human existence, generally, men are bigger and heavier than females. Men are expected, the world and the society expect men to take all the risks. The society push men to take the risks. And men need to understand that. So, for example, the men are expected to be the fishermen. Men are expected to be the farmers, to go to the mountain, to climb the trees and kill and catch the manikou. Men are expected to be the construction workers. Men are expected to climb the telephone poles and fix the high tension wires, the telecommunication antennas, and so on. You go to the airport, the women are inside on the computer doing the admin work. The men are on the tarmac, exposed to the elements. So in our life, men are expected to do the dangerous jobs. In the construction industry, in gravel and concrete, it is a man that is expected to drive the bulldozer way at the top of the hill, precariously perched, where he can fall off. It is a man that is expected to do so. So men need to understand that, and because of that, men need to know that we need to take special care for our bodies. We need to eat better. We need better protein. We need stronger carbohydrates. We need ways in which we can give ourselves that energy and strength. And it would be interesting for men to learn that physiologically, testosterone, the production of testosterone in a man increases with physical work. Physical work increases testosterone, and men need to understand that. In other words, men were made to work. So lazy men who don't want to work, your testosterone is going to suffer. And once your testosterone suffers, your manlyhood suffers, and everything else goes down the drain. So men need to understand that. And then there are some myths in life that the society has fooled men about. We need to confront those things, guys. For example, telling men that Guinness is good for them to make them stronger. This is foolishness. Telling us that we need to eat certain foods and we need to drink a lot of alcohol. That makes no sense. Telling us that it is important that we don't have good breakfast once you have a certain amount of, you know the myths that as much as I do. Men, we need to come out from that kind of a height and understand that these things don't make any sense anymore. We're living in a new era now. Come forward, and those are the things that you got to do to make sure you have general health rather than just sexual health. And may I dare say here, for the men who might be listening to me, I have looked at the kind of activities that men take part in festive seasons, special days, and special holidays. And trust me, every single thing that men do on those special days are detrimental to his overall health. detrimental. And so, especially alcohol. Alcohol is great for some guys psychologically, but guys, if you continue to drink for 10 and 20 decades and 2 and 3 decades, eventually your liver and your testes suffer from the alcohol, and your sexuality and your general health decreases significantly. So men, we just need to step up, forget that old talk that society made us into being. We have a new era, a new time for us. Let's move forward.
I think I want you to elaborate a little bit more on the role of the testosterone in men's sexual and reproductive health. Right? I want you to elaborate on that, because that's a key and important point. I mean, I'm not a man, but I guess from the studies I've done, you know those things. And we see that there is a high intake of alcohol from our men, as you mentioned. And they eat a lot of fast food because they're probably too tired when they get home from liming or drinking, when they get home to eat a decent meal. So I just want you to go deeper into the role of the testosterone for their men's sexual reproductive health.
Absolutely.
And what is a good testosterone level,
right,
for a man?
Oh, beautiful. And men need to know these kind of things as the back of their hand. I used to say, just as how hypertensive people know their blood pressure, diabetic people know their blood sugar level. Guys, we need to know our testosterone level. We need to know our prostate level. You know, those are the things that our men talk. You need to say, okay, I test my testosterone today and it's X, Y, and Z. So guys, testosterone are important for us at a very critical stage in our lives. During adolescence, testosterone is what builds you as a young man to become an adult. Testosterone does its work for you during adolescence from 9 up until you're around 17 years old. Testosterone makes you grow. It makes your muscles expand. It makes you develop good secondary sex characteristics because you're ready to go. And then the testosterone gives you all of the energy and the manhood that you need up until you're around 40. Testosterone only becomes more of a problem after the age of 40. And that's another time for another discussion, because at that time we're talking about prostate health and prostate cancers and that kind of thing. But testosterone is what makes a man a man. Testosterone gives a man confidence. Testosterone gives a man a sense of manhood, brotherhood. Testosterone keeps your voice sounding as you're supposed to sound in the house. It drops the frequency a little bit so you can speak in that kind of voice. And this is important because the voice responds to testosterone levels. Testosterone gives a man energy. So when you get up in the morning, you feel that boost as though you want to go ahead and do things. It makes you concentrate well. It gives you that sense of happiness, that sense of I want to accomplish. As a matter of fact, there is good studies that shows that early morning sex causes testosterone rise to about 10 o'clock in the day, which gives men a significant boost in productivity. So that study actually shows that if the man have early morning sex, he's more likely to do well on his job during the early part of his job than if he did not have sex at all. So testosterone does all these kinds of things for us as men. All right. And you need to know what they are. The normal testosterone level is between 200 and 1,100. So for the argument's sake, you can say when you're a young man, a teenager, your testosterone level might be way up 1,000, 900, 800, whatever it is, because testosterone is not a problem for you at this stage. You're very young and virile and so on. But as you age, like with everything else, it drops. But we kind of monitor the drop if you want to. 800, 700, 600. 200 is the lowest level. So you got to be between 200 and 1,000. And let me tell you something. We've been checking those numbers and seeing these numbers. I have seen men. I mean, remember I said the testosterone has to be between 200 and 1,000. I have seen guys with testosterone of 41. This is like nothing. I've seen guys 100 and something, you know what I mean? Really low testosterone levels. And it really interferes with the man's function. And it can cause something called hypogonadism, which means it actually causes your testes to be smaller than normal. It causes you to produce less sperm. It causes you to have softer and difficult erection. So it really interferes with everything that you have as a man. And of course, it also comes with depression, anxiousness, a lack of confidence. So it does have this social impact. It has the interpersonal impact on yourself and your partners and so on. So not just a physiological impact, but a psychological impact as well.
Okay, so as we wrap up, my final question to you. I mean, you said you've been in this profession for about 20 years, right? So in your line of practice, do you think, and in most recent times, do you think that there is a social shift in how men are now thinking and taking care of their bodies? Let's just create it as our case study in that case.
Well, yes. I would, as I said to a group, I think it was a few days ago. I am happy that the Lord has placed me in a special place and time to be able to make an interesting observation. I've had 10 years of work at the emergency room, 10 years of opportunities to observe medical behavior or medical response behavior of people. And so that was my baseline, if you want to put it that way, in terms of how men respond to health. And then through going on to do masters and going up to administrative work, I have been fortunately placed in a situation in administration where I had the opportunity to plot the data associated with men's health. I began my public health campaign, as I call it, or my men's health campaign in 2012, 2013, when Ms. Goddard at Health Promotion and Mr. Chappell at TAU were those two guys that got me into public health. I didn't even know I could do this thing. They got me into it, and the rest is history. Thank God for these people. And that was the first time I actually took health data and plotted to make a story on men's health. And at that stage, the situation was really dire. Out of the 10 leading causes of death in this country, men were dying before women in 8 out of the 10. When you look at all the health parameters in terms of screening, women was way ahead of men in terms of that. Well, when it comes to prostate cancer, it was even worse. The data and the graph that shows what was going on with prostate cancer was increasing exponentially in the first decade since I was at the ER. And so I've been able to use that data to speak of my men's health story over the years. I used those data to speak on chronic disease over the years as well. I was also very fortunate that coming to the latter part of my senior administrative work at the Ministry of Health, I had a chance to look at the new data and the new numbers from 2010 to 2016 or 2010 to 2017 in some cases. And do you know that the data is beginning to show a different story? The data is beginning to show that the gap between men's health and female and women's health was narrowing, in the sense that more men were accessing care. Now, still not as much as we want to, but more men was accessing care. Interestingly, the data also shows that the shape of the graph related to prostate death was changing. It was flattening. And it also meant that more men were being diagnosed. So more men were being diagnosed with prostate problem, but less of them were dying. And that simply means that one, more men are probably accessing care, better diagnosis is being made. It also probably means that earlier interventions are being made, so less men are dying from it. Now that I have left my administrative work at the Ministry of Health, and now I am purely into private practice for the last 2 years, I have seen more men come for the medical check in the last 2 years than I have seen in the decades prior to me starting private practice. So I'm not just speaking from an epidemiological standpoint and from a data standpoint. It's also from a very practical practice standpoint that more men are coming forward. I've also noticed something else, that not only are a lot of men coming for their own health care and their own health checks for their testosterone levels, their sexual reproductive health, their prostate and so on, a lot more men are now taking their children to come to see the doctor. This must be so emotional for me sometimes.
Can you imagine? I can imagine.
And every time a man come with his child, before I attend to the child, I have to hold my brother and say, brother, man, you have no idea how that makes me feel. Men are bringing their children to come to see the doctor. The ladies at work, we hear calling the ladies and say, because, sometimes the men don't live with the same ladies, but, we call the mother to get the history from the mother. But that kind of a societal shift is what is encouraging me that we are seeing a new day for men and men's health, and we just need to keep encouraging and support them.
So I take it that you're doing a good job in spreading that message about men's health as well, because they're actually listening. They're actually listening. Because, I mean, the thing is, you use an example and you don't know how powerful that could be. Like you said, sometimes you have to go to the back door to speak to that man. So they might be directing them to you. Go to this doctor, he helped you out in a particular way, and they feel more safe, because what you need is that space of safety where you could really go and speak to the problems or the issues you're having in terms of your health. So I think you and your team have been doing a good job over the years, and the men are listening. So kudos to those of you who are now taking your health seriously, and we need more encouragement, I guess, from a female perspective. And you said to learn the language in which they communicate. So this is something that I hope the persons who are listening, ladies, if you're listening, learn the language so that you can be able to communicate with your partner, and maybe you would get more information and get more things more forthcoming in that regard in terms of the health. So yeah, is there anything you want to share with us, Doc, before we leave?
Yeah, what I want to tell men is that the things are in our favor right now. Men just need to arm themselves with the male foods, the food that make man be man. And so, fellas, pink foods is the best for us. Any pink food at all. The guavas, the pink grapefruits, the pomegranates, the watermelon, and those foods, those are great male foods. All the pink foods, and I like to say pink is good for men. I'm wearing my pink today because
I see that.
And then there are some foods that are really great at improving men's testosterone levels. Avocado is an excellent food for man. It has the androgens in it, which helps. It's a baseline of testosterone. Bananas is excellent for men. Bananas, almonds, nuts. Well, nuts on a whole is excellent for men, but the almond nuts is really good. Nuts has a lot of selenium in it, and selenium is an excellent man food for prostate, especially for prostate health and other things. And then the various zinc options. Zinc is really excellent for men with testosterone building sperms and also overall health. The best zinc is what you can get from your food. But this is one of the times when shellfishes actually help. It has a high level of zinc in it. So things like sea moss has good zinc in it. The shell foods, and I guess the best shell foods are things like oysters and so on. But down here in the Caribbean, your labie and your shrimps and your lobster, they still have a decent level of that in it that men, I think, should actually learn to eat a lot, because you really need that to help your testosterone to grow very much. Pumpkin seeds for your vitamin E, exceptional food, because a lot of our guys have low sperm count. So that's one reason why they're not able to have fertility issues and not able to have children. And by using lots of pumpkin seeds, it just helps to build your sperm count. And that could be a very easy thing for you. Men also need to eat their really strong carbs. So your growing provision is excellent. Important that you do this. And good protein as well. Men needs egg. 100% protein in there. And that's absolutely good for them to help to build it themselves. And on top of that, we men really need to conduct or to reduce the amount of alcohol that they consume, because although it gives you that false sense of support, that false sense that you're there, it works underneath to destroy your testosterone level, and eventually you'll see this in your third and fourth decades going on the road. So as we go on and support each other, I pray to God that we are going to do as best we can for the best for all of our men in our society.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for viewing this program. And I spoke with Dr. Francis Martin about men's sexual health. I am your host, Lorna Dale Charles. Thank you for viewing.